first, let me introduce myself. My name is Björn Döhler. I'm the co-CEO at Resolution since July last year, so relatively fresh. But I know these guys since several years, and I was one of the first users of our single sign-on tool. So I want to talk with you, or I want to talk a little bit about single sign-on, but also about the problems which are the trigger for single sign-on and what are clear trends at the moment. So Resolution is all about create a passwordless experience. It started with an initial idea to increase the adoption rate and a little bit the laziness of Christian Reichert, the founder of Resolution, because he hated to log in Jira and Confluence instances several times a day. And then he said to one of our developers, okay, can we find a solution based on a nice new technology? And that was SAML in 2012, 2013, and they created their single sign-on tool for themselves. And when the marketplace was available, they put it on the marketplace. It was successful, and here we are. And we developed a lot other apps, additional apps for this passwordless experience. Over the years, this enterprise user management family of applications grew. And it's not only adoption rate, it's also today an important point in security, and I will talk about a little bit later about the security topics, but it also free up IT resources because it's trend or more standard in a lot of different processes or tasks to automate things. And single sign-on or synchronization of users is definitely also an automation of user management. Let me start with an example, a very short example. It's NHS. NHS is the local health organization in UK. And they did research several years ago, and they said, okay, per login, every employee needs 1 minute 45. So, and they have 5,000 employees. So means a lot of time was spent simple to logging in systems, and not once per day, several times per day, because when you go to grab a coffee or for a lunch break, after this, you need to log in again. So they figured out it is possible to save 130 hours per day when we implement single sign-on for our enterprise applications. So when you're just searching for a budget for single sign-on or user automation, user sync automation projects, simply calculate the same for your companies. You will find some budget there, definitely in the time savings alone. But let's start with the basics. So we all know password policies, and a research from LastPass 2 years ago simply said, every user has today over 190 passwords, and most of them need to are aligned to a password policy. And very often a password policy looks like this. So we need to enter a password which is minimum 8 characters, maximum 32 characters. It needs some special characters like a plus, minus, or a question mark. It needs some uppercase and lowercase things, and it shouldn't be a word, it shouldn't be a company name, it shouldn't be your favorite song or something like that. So you need to create policies. There is also the trigger to change the password every 30 days, every 60 days. And this creates for a user and also for a service desk who need to reset passwords, a huge of effort because it's difficult to remember to these passwords. And very often users simply need a password reset for several business applications. And that's a little bit the additional problem. We're not talking about one password. As I said, most of the users has several business applications. They need to log in several times, and the password should be different from application to application that it's secure. So it's simple and possible to do all this stuff simple with remembering on passwords. So people start to write down passwords on the notes, on the notebook, on the keyboard, in a spreadsheet, and so on. So please first outcome out of the session, please implement a password manager for this, simple to help these users to remember to their passwords. And it creates a second behavior. And the second behavior looks like this. So a new employee or a new user with a new application starts with a good behavior. He creates very complex, strong passwords. And with the first change, this password gets weaker and weaker. So he starts to combine something what is easy to remember, like the company name or colleagues, girlfriend, wife, and so on. And after a time, the password is very easy. It fits to the password policy because it has an uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. But it looks very easy. And at the same time, when the dog name is Emmy and the birthday is on the 1st of October, then this password is not easy anymore. It's not complex anymore. It's very easy to figure this out. So means when we don't solve the challenge of remembering passwords, users automatically create weak passwords. And that's very hard for companies because this is an opener for data leaks. So means insecure passwords used for multiple applications with bad user experience are three big problems with the password policy today. A second myth at the moment is two-factor authentication can avoid data breaches. So is this true? Definitely, it is true. And that's the second important topic for all your enterprise applications, not only Atlassian applications. Please implement two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication where it's possible. 80 to 99% of all data breaches can be prevented with two-factor authentication. So this is clearly a trend where everybody should follow. So it's true that two-factor authentication avoids data breaches, but now think about all your applications with two-factor authentication. You start with Jira, for example, username, complex password, and then the two-factor authentication. You need to log in Confluence, username, password, two-factor authentication, and so on. So this means a big part of your day is needed for simple logging in applications. And then it's a coffee break or a lunch break, you need to log out, and then it starts again. So it isn't a solution to implement two-factor authentication per application because this makes it simple, too complex and too time-consuming. So means another problem is to solve a little bit the first three problems. Two-factor authentication needs a proper and a nice way, and single sign-on can be the solution for that, to make it easy and adaptable for a user. But passwords are not just used for logins. So especially in Atlassian environments, depends a little bit on your setup. Users can create API connections. Normal users can create API connections to extended systems. And I'm sure you know all the statistics about that 80% of company users using non-approved cloud services, and users are very often a second shadow IT department today. So when we take the approach from Zapier.com, Zapier.com is a platform which allows to create easily connections between cloud services or on-premise web services. They simply say, okay, automate your workflow. It's for busy people. It helps to improve your work. Easy peasy. So that's a very nice elevator pitch to every user, and a lot of people do this. But when your admin with a security responsibility read this, he has a complete different picture. Because a lot of people can create connections between web applications, and automatically data is copied to other systems where simple it isn't under control. So there are enough researchers, they already say that API will be the new shadow IT for the next several years. And if you don't believe it, let me tell you a small story. It was 2015. I worked as a sales consultant for a different company, and it was mostly about Cisco. And Cisco announced a very new product. It was Spark. It's now WebEx Teams. A very new product, a beta version, including user integrations and APIs. And they proposed in the next 24 hours, the users, hey, create some connections. You can win a voucher, Apple voucher, $1,000 Apple voucher. And I started to do this. So direct in the session, I started with my mobile phone and the IF app to connect my mail account with this new beta application, then some other accounts. Everything was possible. After all sessions, I started to use Build.io platforms like Zapier to connect the enterprise systems to this new beta software as a normal user. So at the end, I won this developer contest without coding one line. So I can't develop anything. But I won this developer contest. I won the $1,000 Apple voucher. It was nice because iPad Pro was really new. And I connected enterprise systems with this new fancy beta application from Cisco, including Salesforce. That at the end was the interesting connection for them. And there was one important point. It wasn't possible for me to connect to Atlassian applications because single sign-on was already implemented. And in single sign-on environments, people don't have a local password anymore. So this means they can't create the connections to Zapier or other systems because the password don't exist. And it's a huge risk. So today it depends a little bit on the source. Was over 1,000 shadow IT cloud applications are active in every company, and 80% of the employees using this. So without the knowledge of the IT department. So this extends a little bit our password problem. So the adoption, security, weak passwords, logging in. It's a bigger worst case scenarios. These weak passwords are now stored on several uncontrolled places, and they are used to connect systems to other applications and managed by your normal business user. And that is simply a huge problem. It's a disaster from a security perspective. But this is reality today in most of the companies. And if you don't believe it, simple, do a little bit research on data breach statistics. Password weaknesses, 80% of all data breaches happens because of password weaknesses or password problems. So now, how is it possible to solve it? So for the Atlassian environments, we created a single sign-on application, also a user sync application. It is part of the single sign-on application, but it's also available as a standalone app for some specific use cases. Very new in this family is API token. API token is simple solve the last problem, what I explained. It allows to use API tokens instead of passwords in Atlassian environments. And for example, you can also deactivate that users can use their normal basic authentication for external connections. And in single sign-on environments, it enables the administrator to set permissions to users who is allowed to create API token for themselves or on behalf of for other users. So and also since last year is user deactivator, and user deactivator solves another issue which I haven't mentioned in detail here, but a clean user environment is very important because when people leave the company or they left the company, very often some of these connections are already forgotten, and they are active many months after the person has left the company. So it happened to me also several times in the last 10 years. So it's a very normal problem, and user deactivator deactivates user automatically based on inactivity, for example. But let me start with some use cases, and I only want to highlight some points of the use cases. I don't want to explain it in detail. Because first of all, we have tomorrow a workshop at 1:30 where Christian Reichert will demonstrate live the implementation of single sign-on with user sync and API token. But also feel free to contact us in our Slack channel if you want to have more detailed information, or if you want to book a Zoom session to discuss your individual scenario with us. So our single sign-on app, well, first of all, there is for Atlassian data center environments, there is a free single sign-on app, and it's a proper app. It can help with a lot of use cases. But we learned, and that's also the feedback from our customers, and I tried to check a little bit what happened in the customer presentation an hour ago. It was not possible for me to understand this, but I saw our logo, and the single sign-on app was also installed there. So what we learned from our customers is that there are several scenarios where the Atlassian single sign-on option isn't an option, because of you need to create a little bit of transformation of a username, for example, or you have two identity provider, or you want to deal with not only with single sign-on, you want to deal also with single sign-out. But the most important part is the user creation, because single sign-on is one part. The second part is how can I create users in my Atlassian environment, and how can I update these users? And this can be handled from the single sign-on app automatically. So means when a user tries to log in to one of your Atlassian environments, and this is a simple example with ADFS, he will be redirected to the ADFS with a username and one complex password. And then he can use Jira, Confluence, Jira Service Desk, and all the other applications. If the user don't exist, the single sign-on application automatically create this user or update this user if something has changed. So this is called just-in-time provisioning, and that's a very common use case where customers simply start to automate their enterprise user management and identity management. The second interesting point is here that what we see at the moment is a trend on hosted Atlassian environments, more and more, especially for data center customers. And the security departments don't like if you have several connections between hosted Atlassian environments and critic company infrastructure like identity management or something like that. So this solution works without a direct connection of the ADFS and the Atlassian environment, because all the stuff happens on the HTTPS level and layer. So simple environments, there are several use cases for that to use the Atlassian app. There are several use cases if you have sometimes only one issue and you don't want to create a workaround, where our application can be a solution. And our application is also future-proof. And future-proof, and that's also the feedback from most of the customers when they start with the topic single sign-on. It starts with one Jira server or one Confluence instance and one identity provider. And then the company grows, or the company acquires another company, or people change the structure, people change password structures, username structures, group management structures, and so on. So a company and the IT environment is flexible today. So, and what we learned is simple, that it's important that our applications support this flexibility. So it means you can use the single sign-on app, and in this example, in a very complex scenario where a customer has multiple identity providers, Azure AD, for example, and Okta with multi-factor and two-factor authentication. I will explain it in a minute. And he creates his user, updates his user, also deactivates user with a combination of single sign-on and user sync. And that's one commercial application. This customer has also solved single log out, for example, that when a user wants to go to a lunch break, he simply click log out of one application and is logged out of all these applications. And for external API connections or API connections to external systems, this customer simply used our API token app. So he allowed specific users to create API tokens, and these users can use the API token for this Zapier connection or connection to third-party scripts and so on. So why is it so interesting for the two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication? So single sign-on is the enabler to implement centralized two-factor authentication for your environments. Because Azure AD has already a two-factor authentication on board, and also other identity providers like Okta or Ping Identity and so on manage all these two-factor authentication. So means from a user perspective, he log in his Windows domain, for example, with a two-factor authentication, and he's already logged in the other systems like Jira and Confluence. So he only needs to do this process one time and not 3 or 4, 6, 10, or 20 times per day. And this is the easiest way to implement two-factor authentication for Atlassian environments, but also for all other environments. And what we see at the moment is that Jira administrators or Confluence administrators start to communicate about projects two-factor authentication in their companies, and simple they can use the effects that it's planned anyway for some other applications. They simply can use the effect and have to, after that they have two-factor or multi-factor authentication for their environments. So it saves time and money at the end, and it avoids a silo management with a bad user behavior at the end. And that's, by the way, also the cheapest way. So it means when we look to all our problems, and that's a very important part when we talk about 190 passwords per user, we need to decrease the number of passwords for the user. And single sign-on is a solution for that. Most of the companies try at the moment to implement single sign-on to nearly every business applications. And we also see more and more that customers from us start to select applications which are not supported with single sign-on environments and so on. They simply don't select us and they don't use it. So install single sign-on to decrease the number of password and to decrease the risk. Enable your password policy that it can handle complex password. And there is no need anymore to change the password all 30 or 60 days and so on. Most of the security government departments already changed their recommendation on this change policy. So it happens in Europe, but also in the United States, they changed it last year or the year before. So we make it more secure and we improve the user experience. And this is important, especially when you enroll new applications that the people start to use it. When people don't remember to a password or username and password for a new application, they will never use it. With the combination of single sign-on, you have automatically that users can't create API connections to 1,000 systems. You need to control this with apps like API token or service accounts and so on. And at the end, you can avoid that your user is your manager of or a second IT department. And these all with the two-factor and multi-factor authentication, which at the end simple improve your security to 80 and 99% because of data breaches, which happens on weaknesses on passwords. So means single sign-on can solve all these topics, and we learned over the years with a very big and nice customer audience, a lot of new stuff and a lot of new features which we have in our applications are simple customer requests from the past. So feel free to contact us, feel free to discuss maybe your request or simple single sign-on topic, or how can you solve solution X, how can you solve problem X, Y, that. And yeah, feel free to contact us. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the META-INF event.
We received a question concerning your SSO solution. So Atlassian Crowd is well known on the server and data center platforms. So can you just sum up what's the difference between your solution and Atlassian Crowd?
So there are several differences, and Christian Reichert will show it tomorrow also a little bit in the live demonstration. But to simplify it, Atlassian Crowd is for Atlassian applications and can be an identity provider and manage your identities. But it works in the Atlassian silo. Our application connects to existing identity providers like Azure AD in companies or Okta or Ping Identity. And it simply allows the Atlassian user management integration in existing user management processes of the whole company. So it avoids a little bit these Atlassian silo again and extend it more.
Thank you. The next question is whether your solution is available on the cloud, or is there any technical limitations that prevent you from releasing it?
Yeah, Atlassian don't allow the user management on the cloud instance. So
yeah, we have Atlassian access, in the cloud. So
yeah. So at the moment, exactly. So at the moment, it's simply not possible, and we think also for the future, Atlassian want to have this gameplay by their own and not by vendors.
Okay, and the last question. Which Atlassian products may be integrated into the SSO solution? So we have Jira and Confluence, obviously. What are those?
All. So also Bitbucket, Bamboo, Fisheye are included. Trello is not part of this, but for all, let's say, common Atlassian applications in the server and data center environment, our single sign-on works.
Okay. Thank you very much, Björn, for the wonderful presentation. You may receive further questions in the Slack channel, so please stay around, and thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.